It's bizarre, isn't it, how sensory our memories are. Those moments where a smell, a sound, colour, they can transport you back in time. It can be really, sometimes inexplicably visceral, your body vibrating with the intensity of it all, like you're floating through your dreams. This is Dream Space for Factory International, and I'm Gemma Kearney. I'm a broadcaster, an art lover, and always hungry for new ideas. For me, dreams are the gateway to alternate futures. Throughout this series so far, senses have played a huge role in the dream spaces of our wonderful guests as they imagine all the ways we can connect in an increasingly fractured world. Whether that's through touch or the taste of cherished recipes, perfect soundtracks, or the smell of nature. In each episode of Dream Space, we ask some of the most innovative and refreshing minds to tap into their imagination, to create a dream world where anything is possible. The ultimate blank canvas. What happens when we step outside of the pressures of our everyday lives and give ourselves permission to dream? Join us as we push boundaries, inventing tomorrow together. Last time, we were joined by the curator, broadcaster and educator Ryan Gander. In his dream space, gone are the days of social media distraction. Instead, you can daydream feeling safe and taken care of. In the words of Ryan himself, imagination is the science of freedom. Today, we're joined by the brilliant mind of Amir Nizar Zuabi, an award-winning Palestinian playwright and director.
I believe the power of the water more than the power of the stone or the metal. I think a drip of water will change stone eventually. It takes time, it takes patience, but it happens. And water is clever. It finds the cracks. You can't stop it.
Nizar was the founding artistic director of ShiberHur Theatre Company in Palestine, an associate director of the Young Vic Theatre, a member of the United Theatres Europe for Artistic Achievement, and an alumni of the Sundance Institute Theatre Program. Following his work on The Walk in January 2022, he took up the role of artistic director of The Walk Productions Limited. The Walk followed the epic 8,000-kilometre journey of little Amal, a 9-year-old refugee in the form of a 3.5-metre puppet that began at the Turkish-Syrian border and came to a close in Manchester. Nizar's latest project is The Herds, the journey of hundreds of life-size puppet animals from West Africa to Norway fleeing climate disaster. I cannot wait to share his dream world with you all. I consider myself very lucky as the holiday rep, the guide, the weaver of dreams here on Dream Space. And it's because I get an insight into the imagination of some of the most diverse, interesting, renegade, open people. And today is no exception. We are going to go to the dream space of Amir Nizar Zuabi. Hello.
Hello, Gemma.
How do you feel about the dream space? Is it something as a concept that makes you comfortable? Are you excited, or do you not like to go there?
I'm a theater writer and theater director, so dream space is what I try to materialize most of the time. I'm trying to create different spaces. So I go there quite often in my thoughts. It's a challenging place because dreams and nightmares are sometimes intermingled, but it's a space where everything is possible, and I think that's, in many ways, that's what art is.
I was thinking about our minds just last night before I went to sleep, our minds as a collective. And I wonder why sometimes our minds can feel like a challenging space. Like, why are we societally afraid of change? Why do we find it difficult to conjure up new ideas, brighter futures? There seems to be a barrier sometimes, and having been someone who's made art in different parts of the world, I was wondering whether you've come across a potential fear of the unknown.
I'm a Palestinian. I come against fear every day in my day-to-day life. As an artist, as a political being, as a citizen of a country that is in constant political duress. But fear is the commodity of oppression, and curiosity is the way to beat it. Whenever I meet fear, I try and challenge it with curiosity. And fear is normal. Fear is good. Fear is what makes our children not do stupid things, although they do. Fear is a good thing, but fear can't be the motivation, can't be the motor. And I think we're afraid to think freely. You know, we kind of pretend to live in open, democratic societies where everything's allowed and all discussions are on the table, but everybody knows this is not true. We're afraid to challenge ourselves. Lots of things that you cannot say, and this is increasing. It's wrapped up in political correctness. It's wrapped up in sensitivity to others. And all these things are good things until they are flipped and they become censorships. They become a way where you censor yourself, where you're afraid to go to the dark recesses of your soul when we all have them, and they're important. They're important because they are the boundaries of our morality or of our definitions. And unless we challenge them, unless we're willing to go there, we're in what I consider as some of the most boring concepts in the world is safe space. And I go, yeah, safe space is great. If that's what you need, if you need safety. I want adventure, I want vivacity, I want wildness, and of course I want it with a lot of mutual respect and with a lot of curiosity and with a lot of listening. They're spun off against each other. If you're curious and adventurous, that means you're infringing on somebody else's right to be, and I don't think that's true. I think we can challenge each other respectfully, with love, with curiosity. That's mankind, that's human thought up until now. We wouldn't have achieved a lot had we not operated in that way. And I think for me, there's two big forces in this world. One of them is fear. That's the classic fight or flight. But I want to replace the fight and the flight with fear and curiosity. Curiosity creates love. Curiosity creates respect. Curiosity creates richness. Curiosity creates ambition. And curiosity is one of the first instigators to see what's beauty. Right? It's the first step towards beauty for me. If you're curious about something and you learn enough about it, you delve into it, you will find what is beautiful in it. And beauty exists in everything, if you're curious enough to look for it. We very often, especially in Western societies, that I'm not a product of, because I grew up in Palestine and I only moved to the UK a couple of years ago, so I'm not necessarily, but we all are in some way, because the Western dominance is everywhere. The rationale aspect of thinking became the only way to judge things, to admire things, to appreciate things. Even now in the arts, you do a theater show and they immediately ask you, what's the metrics? What's the impact? What's the numbers? Kind of quantify it for us. Tell us how you measure it metrically. How is this science? And I go, yeah, science is great. Of course, science is science. At the same time, it's just one layer of reality, right? We think through our rationale. That's one layer, but falling in love is not rational. We're not rational creatures. But somehow this has become the only measure, the only way of thinking of things. And I think that's where art is very interesting, because art becomes very subversive in these places. You hear a piece of music and suddenly you start crying. You can't really measure it metrically. You can reproduce that same tonality or the same model, but it won't move you. So it's not scientific, it's something else. We're so conditioned in thinking that anything that isn't rational, that isn't proven, that you can't follow the rational logic of, is false. And of course, the minute you read a Shakespeare, all these assumptions need to go out of the window, because there's witches and there's unnatural events. And I think that's where art becomes very beautiful. And of course, the minute you hear Bach, these assumptions need to go out of the window. It's one of the last bastions that is I hope, still trying honestly to challenge the way we think.
Within your dream space, where do we go for somebody who is so excited by adventure?
We would go to 12th century Baghdad, to Dar al-Hikmah, to the House of Wisdom, where scholars from all over the world gathered to learn together, to debate, poets, philosophers, artists, great artists. We'd go to the Library of Alexandria. These spaces existed. You want to go, they still exist. I'm not sure they exist in that openness anymore. But, and this is a very big but, the knowledge is there. The knowledge exists all around us. And it's very interesting, the age that we're living in. It's a confused age because we're inundated with unbelievable amounts of knowledge. It's everywhere. You want to read about anything, you just Google it. It's in your computer. We're walking around with super data. So Dar al-Hikmah is in our pockets. But I think we're lazy, and I think we're frightened, and I think we're told repeatedly that it doesn't matter. And we're fed a very, very reduced cocktail, sugary cocktail of satisfactions. But culture grows from friction against other ideas. I hope that the short cocktail candy that we live on now will fall out of fashion, and then we'll go back to some kind of long form that allows relationship building, that allows complexity, that allows us a journey. In the long form theater that I create, in these long theatrical journeys, it is the attempt to join together multiple communities and give them time, give them space, tell them you are something out of a very, very long tapestry. You're part of a much wider story, which I think is important for us. And of course, also we find ourselves addicted to our social media and, the fact that there's millions of people following our theatrical journeys across the world. But I hope we're trying to subvert this a bit as we do it. We don't fall victim to it completely. It's very hard not to.
So we've time traveled to 12th century Baghdad, which is very exciting. And I can't stop thinking about the word pilgrimage. I think perhaps this idea that there were people there from all over the world, some of which would have had to have travelled so far to be there. The enrichment in terms of how it even lands in your body, like an embodied conversation, I think it must have really felt elevating to finally get to the destination in a way, because it would have taken ages if you come from really far.
It would have taken ages, and on the way you would learn a lot. And Dar al-Hikmah is interesting because you imagine an ancient world, right? 1001 nights kind of, and sprinkle a bit of Walt Disney Aladdin into it. But actually it's a very, very sophisticated society. In comparison to what's happening in Europe at that time, Europe is deep in its dark ages. Baghdad has lights in the streets. And it's a very tolerant society. There are ethnic minorities from all over. And they are searching for wisdom. The main attempt is to acquire more and more and more technology, wisdom. It's a curious society. That space is a place where people from all over the world are meeting. And after long journeys, but they all bring something to share. And there's huge advances politically, scientifically. It's a period where the world does a quantum leap in terms of its ability to think, to know. But the main thing that's interesting in that period for me is the fact that the spirit is open and curious and is welcoming. And again, in every junction of our history, the minute a society is open to others, is welcoming, is curious, there's a boom in knowledge.
I wonder, like you say, about this length and this long form creates like a sense of reverence for being more gentle and just like being less quick. And again, going back to our journey to 12th century, the journey feels slow, but necessarily so?
I believe the power of the water more than the power of the stone or the metal. I think a drip of water will change stone eventually. It takes time, it takes patience, but it happens. And water is clever. It finds the cracks. You can't stop it, right? I believe the beauty of the defeated. I come from a defeated nation. Because in defeat, a lot of generosity is exchanged. I hate the victors. I think the victorious are boring. They're narrow-minded. I'll always choose Thomas the Doubter to the Roman soldier with the spear. I think there's beauty and humility and a different time and space in defeat. I want to move away from this kind of knee-jerk masculinity. They are boring and their cultural products are boring as a response because everything becomes as narrow and as shallow as metal, as tin. It doesn't resonate. It has no mercy in it. It has no compassion. And compassion is complicated. Mercy is complicated. It takes a back and forth. An act of compassion takes a back and forth, like breathing. A punch is very boring. A punch is a straight line. It's just an impact of energy.
So in your dream space, we have the fluidity of water and has an almost an anti-masculine quality or a sense of balance, definitely a sense of stillness and slow to get there to a space of compassion. What do we have in our toolbox? If we're filling up our backpack to go on this pilgrimage, is there any particular type of food or smell or protection that we can take with us?
You know, if we are traveling to Baghdad, we're traveling along spice routes. So I think our bag is full of spices and color. But our bag can be also full with whatever you fancy. There is also beauty in having just dates and bread that is enough to sustain us and a sip of cold water. But I do think it's a place that opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of color and senses, and because it is a coming together of multiple spaces, of multiple cultures, of multiple rhythms, aesthetics, colors, and the colors are evident in the food. You know, again, when you think of the richness of the Middle Eastern cuisine, is because everybody passed through it. Everybody came with something, with an idea, threw it on the table and left. Some left, some stayed. So yeah, it's not sustenance that we're traveling with. One of the most beautiful things about our culture is that the host doesn't eat with you. The host is responsible that you eat. The responsibility is to feed. And there's something beautiful about that because it's an act of putting yourself, hungry as you are, putting yourself to the side for a second and making sure that your friends, your family, whoever is around you, the strangers that you collected into are fed, are taken care of. And this act of generosity, anybody that likes cooking knows that there's nothing nicer and there's nothing more fulfilling than knowing that the people you like are eating this and think that this is fantastic. Because you can think it's great. If somebody goes, too salty, you're bummed for the day. So I think it's that. I think it's the act of giving through food, through color, through sensory experiences.
This is your dream space. You get to choose the texts and we trust you. What 4 books will be in our travelling library until we get to our destination?
Oh wow. Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky, because it's such an incredible literary achievement. I want to say the Quran and the Old Testament, but I kind of go read them before you go on the journey. I would take the poetry of Mahmoud Darwish, any of them, just to open up a different space. Abu Salem Faulkner, and Al-Ma'arri, who wrote the Divine Comedy 500 years before the real Divine Comedy, and is one of the most beautiful ancient Islamic thinkers and philosophers. And I'm trying to be mixed so you don't get bored on your journey.
I'm wondering if you have any guidelines for us in terms of keeping this sense of passion, because I feel in your words, in your delivery, in your dream, we're engaged, we're wisdom seekers, and there is a passion for that. It's very helpful, as a resource of energy, but it's going to take a while, so we may get tired. And I think that exhaustion takes away our passion sometimes. And whether you have any tips, or whether it's a particular type of music, or making sure that we definitely get enough sleep, practical tips on how we stay engaged on this journey.
One tip, which is we all remember the first time we saw, as children, we saw an ant, or we saw a worm, or we saw something that was so fantastic. And there's nothing more beautiful than the wonder that we feel as children. We all remember the sense of wonder about something. Continuously tap into that place, the place of wonderment of children. Music, put Bach, put Max Richter. You'll get energized. Whatever makes you feel alive. And the last tip is that walk out of your house for a second, look at the people around you, smile to them. You'll see that people will smile back very easily. If you have good, curious eyes, people will respond with good, curious eyes. We're herd animals. Whatever we project, people project back to us very quickly. And try and imagine, if you give yourself 1 minute and you try to imagine the lives of others, you will see how there's multiple possibilities in any given moment and multiple stories, and you don't know if they're true or not, and it doesn't matter because it's their stories and it's none of our business. But if you look out of your window and you see houses on the other side of the street, and you know that each house contains a family and each family contains multiples of you, complex, beautiful, ugly, silly, profound, all of it, everything that is you. You understand the multiplicity of options, the multiplicity of stories, the richness that surrounds us. And if this is not enough to get you off your backside, stay on your backside. I can't help you.
Rhythms. You mentioned some beautiful classical scores. Are there any other genres that we veer into in terms of the sounds and the beats?
I'm very curious about all kinds of music. I can't go, this is my genre. Again, I think there's beauty everywhere. The other day, driving through Dakar, on the radio, there was some kind of choral music that literally, without the ability to communicate with the driver, because my French is horrid, I kind of understood who it was. It was Qasidai, so kind of ancient Sufi music from Tuba. And it was incredible. I've been listening to it on repeat for the last 10 days because it's incredible in the richness and the different layers and the complete different harmony. Again, there's endless. It doesn't matter what you're listening to. What I do tend to do is from time to time just flick and go to a place I don't know. And you discover incredible things that way. And sometimes you waste half an hour listening to really bad music. It's okay. And recently, I refound somebody called Chekarimiti, who is considered the mother of Rai. She's Algerian. And she's fantastic. But what blew my mind was the complexity of rhythm. Because this is a place that has collected rhythms from Africa for centuries, mixed them with the Berber and the Arab traditions, and then is using now European rhythm samples on top of it. So you get this weird, multi-layered reality of rhythm, which you seldom meet something that complex rhythmically. to the degree that sometimes you go, stop, I can't deal with it. It's too much. It's almost, you don't know what you're listening to anymore because there's so many layers of rhythm. And the gentility of Rokhaya Torore from Mali, who sings and makes you crumble into dust because of the gentle soul that comes through, the profoundness of culture that comes through, the femininity. And it's endless, There's no limit to that.
What a truly generous and beautiful dream space to inhabit. I feel like we were lucky enough to float on something quite rare in these current times, which is a gentle pace. And I'm really, really thankful. I'm Gemma Kearney, and you've been listening to Dream Space from Factory International. Today we've been dreaming with Amir Nizar Zuabi, and you can join us next time to hear composer, DJ and producer Afrodeutsch. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. And if you can't wait until the next episode, then you can head to Factory International's website to find out more exciting artistic content on Factory Plus. You can even catch up with some of the dream spaces that we've already visited in this series, from Zawi Ashton to Hatain Patel and David Hoyle. And if you've just discovered our dream space, where have you been? Why not check out our first series? There's previous guests on there, including S. Devlin, Jen Nakuru, Lem Sisay and Maxine Peake. Until next time, keep dreaming.